Today, we're diving into the absolutely wild, true story of a 16th century German knight. Honestly, his life makes most fantasy novels look pretty tame. This is the story of the knight with the iron hand.
So let's meet the man himself, Götz von Berlichingen. And yeah, that question on the screen, we're being completely serious. Long before comic books were even a thing, this guy earned the nickname Götz of the Iron Hand. And as you're about to find out, that name was brutally literal. He was a nobleman, a mercenary, and just one of the most fearsome characters of his time.
And he definitely didn't mince words. This phrase right here, it was his supposed answer when an enemy demanded he surrender. It's actually gone down in history as the Swabian salute. It just perfectly sums up the kind of defiant, larger-than-life person we're talking about here.
So how exactly does someone become a legend with an infamous catchphrase? Well, for Götz, his path started out like a lot of guys from his social class, born into a noble family, but basically raised for the battlefield.
You know, his early career was pretty standard stuff for a young noble. He was born in 1480, served under some powerful lords, even the Holy Roman Emperor himself. But then, around 1500, Götz decided to take a completely different path. He went into business for himself and started his own company of mercenaries. Now, this was a huge deal. It meant he didn't answer to any single master, and it set him on this lifelong journey of total independence and, well, a whole lot of fighting.
Every legend has that one moment, right? That origin story that defines everything. For Götz, that moment came with the roar of a cannon, a catastrophic injury that should have ended his career, but instead, it's what made him a myth.
Okay, just try to imagine this. You're in the middle of a siege, total chaos, and a cannonball hits your own sword with so much force that it drives the blade right into your arm, cutting off your right hand clean at the wrist. For literally any other knight, that's it. Career over, if you even survive. But for Götz, this was just the beginning.
Instead of just retiring, Götz did something nobody expected. He had a replacement built. Actually, he'd end up having two made, and you're looking at them right now. The first one was pretty basic, but the second one, wow. The second one was a straight-up technological marvel for the 1500s.
I mean, look at this thing. This second hand was incredibly complex. It wasn't just some chunk of metal on his arm. It had articulated joints, these internal ratchet systems that let him lock the fingers in place. With this prosthesis, he could grab the reins of his horse, he could hold a shield, and get this, he could even hold a quill pen to write his memoirs. He was back in the game.
Now, if you want to understand how Götz got away with everything he did, you need to know this term, Reichsritter, Imperial Knight. This was a really unique and powerful status back in the Holy Roman Empire. See, these knights were kind of a holdover from an older time, and they answered to no one except the emperor himself. This was basically a legal loophole that gave Götz a shocking amount of freedom to go off and fight his own private wars.
And oh boy, did he ever fight those wars. Armed with his brand new iron hand, Götz didn't just pick up where he left off. No, he doubled down and became one of the most feared and active mercenaries in the entire region.
15. According to his own autobiography, that's the number of major feuds he fought in. And that's just the ones he started himself. It doesn't even count all the other battles and skirmishes he fought for other people. To put it simply, for Götz, war was just a normal Tuesday. He was a professional troublemaker in an already violent time.
And this wasn't just for kicks, it was a serious high-stakes business. Let's put these numbers in perspective. A skilled craftsman back then might make maybe 200 gulden in an entire year. Götz had to pay out a mind-boggling 14,000 gulden to get out of trouble with the emperor. But then he could turn right around and make over 8,000 for kidnapping a single count. We're talking huge risks for even bigger rewards.
This timeline just gives you a little taste of his crazy career. One minute he's raiding merchants and getting outlawed, the next he's getting captured by his enemies. He even got roped into leading a peasant rebellion at one point. And his very last campaign fought for the emperor against the French when he was in his 60s. The man just never stopped.
Yeah, that whole German Peasants War thing is one of the more controversial parts of his life. He was put in charge of a rebel army, but later on, he claimed he was forced into it and couldn't stop him from committing atrocities, so he just left. So what's the real story? Was he a reluctant leader trying to do the right thing, or is that just a convenient excuse to save his own skin after the rebellion failed? It really shows you how complex this guy was.
But the story of Götz doesn't end when he dies. Not even close. In a way, that's when his second life began. His transformation from this feared mercenary into a timeless national myth.
After a life that was just defined by violence, Götz actually died peacefully in his own castle at 81 years old. But probably the smartest thing he ever did was write his autobiography. It was a brilliant move, really. It let him frame his entire, chaotic life exactly the way he wanted future generations to see it.
And this right here shows you just how powerful that was. On the one hand, you have the historical Götz, a tough, calculating, and often brutal mercenary. But a couple centuries later, the famous writer Johann Wolfgang von Goethe gets a hold of his story and turns him into something totally different. A noble, romantic hero fighting for freedom. And that version, that myth, really struck a chord in Germany at the time.
Goethe's play made Götz a German national icon, and from there his story just exploded, inspiring everything from other plays to symphonies. But there's also a much darker side of this legacy. His name became a symbol of German strength, so much so that it was co-opted by the Nazis and used for a Waffen-SS Panzer Division in World War II. It's a really chilling reminder of how a national myth can be twisted for truly horrible purposes.
So that brings us to the big question. How should we remember Götz von Berlichingen? Was he a brutal warlord, just a product of a violent time? Or was he a resilient hero, a symbol of defiance and the human will to overcome anything? You know, maybe the most fascinating thing about him is that he was somehow both.